Greetings. Good day to you. I hope that you're seeing this video under beautiful, wonderful, splendid conditions. I love you. And I just wanted to speak on, I haven't decided necessarily yet as I'm speaking right now, but I wanted to, at some point, I'm going to talk to you about what I have discovered is what human beings have called God. The concept of God in various traditions, cultures, civilizations, societies around the world, beliefs individuals hold, and what my take on that is, how I live my life, how I discovered things for myself with regard to the nature of reality, the nature of where this universe came from. And in my research, when I was younger, as I've said to you before, my first thoughts that I could remember, I was 12 days prior to being born, and my thought was, I have to remember to continue to exist, otherwise I won't. And I bring that up because there were a few realizations that I had around that time and shortly after I was born. And these realizations were, I didn't know it at the time, obviously, but these realizations were logical deductions. It's not that I was discovering something that was so hidden, is that I was remembering something that was inherent and very obvious. One of those things was that nobody had the right to do anything to me that I didn't want them to do. And because of that, through the same apophatic method of deduction, affirmation through negation, finding out what something is by analyzing and discovering all the things that it's not, I knew that I didn't have the right to do anything to anybody they didn't want. And when I was born and shortly after that, people were telling, I kind of got whiffed that people didn't understand that. People didn't understand the very simple, and I quickly heard of the golden rule. And the golden rule was do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I would later find out it's worded all fucked up. It's actually don't do anything to anybody they don't want you to do. That's objective morality. It's only subjective in that you're respecting a specific subject's bodily autonomy, but their bodily autonomy is objective. How do I know that? From the apophatic method. I know their bodily autonomy is objective because without your violence or someone's violence, their bodily autonomy would be objectively respected by beings capable of respecting it. Obviously, if she crosses a hungry lion, it's all on the table because they don't have the same level of understanding. But what does all this have to do with God? Well, I became very aware also of something called instincts. I'm sure you're very aware of instincts now, or at least you understand what instincts are. But what I understood instincts to be when I was very, very young, and I mean like before I was even 2 years old, was the operating parameters of the organism. The operating parameters, the format, the hard drive. The hard drive without a brain, without it is like the data sets that are generated and developed and maintained and evolved over time. And I don't mean evolution like commonly people will talk about Darwinian evolution, but the movement from a space of less optimal efficiency to more optimal efficiency. That's when I describe evolving or evolution, I'm describing the movement from less optimal and less efficient to more optimal and more efficient. And I recognized that instincts carry the data sets. And then I began to discover that through habitual stimulation in what we could call suboptimal ways, the human being, the individual, and the masses could be manipulated to operate in a suboptimal way, all the while thinking that they were at least operating at some kind of medium. Again, what does this have to do with God? Well, through my research all throughout my life, I verified my hypothesis that I had when I was like a baby, that no one had the right to do anything to anyone that they didn't want, by virtue of them not having the right to do anything to them. Like, nobody can profess this right legitimately. I think Kim Jong-un, if he's still around, is one of the few people who has successfully forced people to think that they have the right to dictate in modern times. Largely, humanity has moved from the suboptimal of a monarchy, kings and queens, and authority vested in one, to what I've lived my whole life under, which is authority vested in strangers as opposed to the one king or queen. But that same claim, that same non-existent right to arbitrarily dictate that the king and queen claimed, has been diffused. It has been dissected and shared. This non-existent right has been shared. I know I'm driving my knees. I do that a lot. Probably gonna get my ass reamed for it, for anybody who sees this shit. But I've been doing it for 30 years, or 25, 28 years, 30, however long I've been driving. So this non-existent right to share the power to exercise a non-existent ability, such as the ability to arbitrate. That's number one, because it's going to get back to what this has to do with God. Arbitrate, dictate, tax, imprison, arrest, detain peaceful people. So I've discovered since then that the reason that this right is inherent and observable and quantifiable and objective is because God is all of us. And I know that this has been said in many different ways, in many different traditions. This is some of the evidence I use to back up my claim. But I'm going to start from the beginning. Hopefully I've gotten the book, The One Big Light, published, and you've read it, you understand it. But if not, and just so that this is also here, and just in case you're listening to hear me talk, The One Big Light is a concept, a book that I wrote. It's already written. I just haven't solidified the images I want to use, because I'm not sure if I want to use AI, which probably is pretty big in your time, because it's pretty big now already. But I want images that are original and not so AI generated and yada, yada, yada. But The One Big Light starts off and it says, before all space or time, there lived the one big light of creation. And that I'm talking about pure creation, pure consciousness. And the reason for that is because there were only two options. This is apophatic inquiry again. Affirmation through negation. There were only two options. One, nothing would exist, nothing was existing. And the other option, something could exist, so something existed. And the material of this light, this one big light of creation and consciousness, whether specifically intelligent at the time or self-aware, I should say, it did the opposite of one of the options, which was to not exist or do anything, which was to exist. And once it existed and was self-aware that it existed, it again had only two options. This all-powerful thing only had two options. It's only all-powerful because it's the only thing that ever existed. But this all-powerful thing only had two options. Option one, exist and do nothing. Option two, exist and do something. That's the only two options this thing had. Because those are the only logical two options that it would have been around. So since this thing had absolutely nothing physical to create the physical world, meaning it didn't have any atoms to create objects and physical things, it didn't have any molecules, it didn't have any quarks and electrons and protons, it didn't have any wood, it didn't have any metal, it didn't have any iron, it didn't have any diamonds, it didn't have any gold, it didn't have any of the material that we see is here. So how could it create these materials? How could it create these physical materials if there was nothing physical to create them with. So this thing had to create all of these physical things with pure consciousness, with pure thought and mind. That's how this thing did it. When we say that the physical world isn't physical, that it is it's energy vibrating at various levels of intensity and frequency, how frequently we see this occurrence, that is what the physical world is made of, because there was never anything physical to make the physical world out of. So the universe is mental. The universe is made of consciousness. That's all that is here. There's a great book called The Kybalion that hopefully I've made available to you. And so this entity, backtracking a little bit, this entity needed to do something. There's only one thing it could have done, theoretically, which is do something. So it created using consciousness and created using mind. It created what I'm going to use the example of as a theme park, a water park, a theme park, a carnival. It created this theme park and this carnival because it wanted something and it wanted to do something, and the perfection and the intelligence is intrinsic to the nature of the spirit and the nature of that force and energy, which is pure creation. So this thing created this theme park, clean slate theme park. It has, we're going to use the example of rides. It's got concessions, cotton candy, popcorn, food, hot dogs, corn dogs. It's got concessions. And we're going to just use that as the example for all food. And it has rides. We're going to use mountains, trees, rivers. We're going to use the physical world, because you can pretty much, how we use the physical world, and we ride the physical world. So this force, we're just going to call it a force now, source force, created this theme park, but there was nobody to ride the rides or try the food and eat the food and enjoy the concessions. There was nobody to enjoy the theme park. With no one to enjoy the theme park, because this creative force, the theme park was made out of the creative force and made with the energy and input of the creative force. The creative force couldn't engage in the theme park itself physically, because the theme park was made of it. And it also couldn't get a second opinion on the theme park. It needed to know, like, what is this? What is the value of this? What is the purpose of this? What is the meaning of this? What does it feel like? Just because a doctor creates a cure for something but never has the thing that they're curing, it means that just because you create something doesn't mean you have experienced it. You probably can, but it doesn't mean, you can, but it doesn't mean you have, just because you created it. So this creation existed without real meaning or purpose, not without real meaning or purpose, but without any way to experience that meaning or purpose. So this creator force had to create something that could experience it in its physical state. So it created conscious beings of various levels of consciousness. And you couldn't just have the level of consciousness that would be like, oh, this is a theme park, I like it, it's great, it's cool, the rides. You had to incarnate at such a multitude of various levels of consciousness as to create a matrix, a meat to the body of your creation, or a meat to the body of the consciousness. There had to be other levels of consciousness that the consciousness that you wanted the second opinion from, the expert opinion from, had other levels of consciousness to compare and contrast itself with, to better understand itself, so that it could better understand its relationship to the theme park and its purpose in the theme park. So God is all of mankind, all of animal kind, all of plant kind, and I'm talking about, obviously it is also the mountains, the trees, the intangible, the inanimate physical world, but it had to incarnate as all of the life that has ever existed. Every single, and I know people will say, we've already known this from a religious context, but the reason why what I'm talking about is slightly different is because that is by virtue of where our rights come from. We say our rights come from our Creator. It's because literally we have an equal body share, an equal spirit part. If you've seen the movie Transformers, we all have the same amount of spark of life animation in us. Our rights, our equal rights, are by virtue of that equal spark. You might be able to dunk, and somebody else might not be able to. And you might be able to get pregnant, and somebody else might not be able to. But we're not talking about abilities. We're talking about rights and freedom. The reason why those rights and freedom exist is because we gave them to ourselves in order to have, for this creative force to experience this theme park from optimal conditions and circumstances, in the most optimal way, the most scientifically, logically reasonable, moral way is the most optimum way. It is the most correct way. It is the most efficient way. And since everything in this fucking theme park is super hyper intelligently designed and put together, this would be no different. You are allowed to do anything you want. You are all owed the right and freedom to do anything you want in this theme park. As long as you don't do that thing or those things to any other being that doesn't want you to do them. And there's a myriad of ways that beings objectively display and express their approval or distaste for a specific action. So societies have brainwashed and groomed people into thinking that right and wrong, that correct and incorrect, that morality is subjective, because they think that we are all just individual monads that were created by a God, which in their opinion is more like a human being, than a creator force, a force that is a lot less like a human being, especially in consciousness, level of consciousness, as opposed to just physically not a human being, knew or was aware, it's a better way to put it, how it would have to function for anything to function. No different than anything else we see. Photosynthesis operates a certain specific way because if it didn't, it would have to operate a different way that would be probably less optimal. So when we see the liberty, the right, the freedom, they exist in respect and retrospect to the fact that every living being is God. Not a piece of God, not an expression of God. It is these things, but it's more than that. Not just a reflection of God, but an avatar, holographic representation of God in the physical world. And how can a God have the right to dictate to another God? How can a part of God have the right to dictate to another part of God? So why is this so important? Because in the world, most of our problems that we see socially comes from people wanting to take their subjective opinions, perspectives, and feelings about right and wrong, and they want to superimpose them on everybody else and impose them on others to then validate their belief and their sacrifices of time, energy, thought, emotion that they have sacrificed and are willing to give toward this a specific concept or idea of the nature of humanity and what we're doing here on everybody else, but they don't have the right to do that because no one's being harmed. When we look at gay people, the LGBTQIA community, trans people, these people are not hurting anyone with their actions, which is why by virtue they are not engaging in wrong behavior. You can disagree with it, but your disagreement will be from a religious perspective, a belief perspective, a indoctrinated, groomed, manipulated, brainwashed, coerced perspective. If you think somebody shouldn't be doing a substance because it's unhealthy, that's your opinion. If you think somebody shouldn't be able to do a substance because they might hurt somebody, that's your opinion. That might is irrelevant. That might is irrelevant because it's not an inevitability. You can engage in a substance and perfectly exist without harming anybody on that substance. And the myriad of ways that culturally and socially things are considered, declared, enforced as wrong that are not wrong. Driving at 68 miles an hour. Driving with my knees. We are whole ass adults. First of all, we're human beings that have inalienable freedom. Rights are something that governments protect and guarantee, but do not create. Let me say that again for my children, because I know you already know this, but for the record, human beings do not create rights. That's why human beings cannot dictate, grant, or revoke people's rights. All you can do with rights is respect them or violate them, and that's why it's called violence, because somebody's rights is being violated. So none of this is ambiguous. None of this is undiscoverable. None of this is impossible to understand or comprehend. But people have been so brainwashed that they refuse to even consider it, and this is their own folly. Luckily, because of my theories, not because of my theories, but what my research has concluded is that it doesn't matter. That's why the axiom, doing the right thing is its own reward, is so true, because no matter if mankind fails and goes extinct, you can exist for your experience in the theme park to the extent that it's possible without violence enacted upon you. Do whatever the fuck you want here. And of course, despite the violence of capitalism, the monetary system, currencies, and stuff like that, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do here, as long as you don't do that thing to someone else without the permission. That includes defrauding them. Every form of reasonable, logical, even legal harm that can be done to a being has to do with a theft. If you punch somebody in the mouth, that's assault. You're stealing their ability to consent to what happens to their body, so you're stealing their bodily autonomy. If you sexually assault someone, you are stealing their bodily autonomy. You're engaging in theft of their bodily autonomy. If you unalive or kill someone, I don't know where I'm gonna put this. If you kill someone, you are stealing their bodily autonomy. If you lie to someone, you're stealing their bodily autonomy by virtue of their energy, because they might make different decisions if they know the truth, because it affects them. Energy, options, feelings, like there's a lot that goes into lying. This is why it's wrong and incorrect to lie. It's not something that is prosecuted, but that's why it is a moral failure, is because you literally are stealing. Anything that is a theft, that is the just to summarize, the objective moral standard in this universe is theft. Why? Because when you steal, you are reducing the growth and you are reducing the optimal operating capacity of something inside of something that is finite, which is the all, which is what we're calling God. You steal some of my cells from the place that they're supposed to be over here, and you move them somewhere else, and now they are in a position that they don't belong in. Theft is the positioning of something that belongs somewhere, which is like your bodily autonomy belongs in your hands, and has been shifted somewhere it doesn't belong, and that is a cancer, and doing something that it doesn't, that it shouldn't be doing. That's cancer. So this, and I'm not saying that that's all cancer for the analogy and it just moves and that's all the cancer. No, but the metaphor still stands. I'm glad I keep doing this, because a lot of times I drive this trip. Let me show you. Yeah. This is where I've been going this whole time. I drive this trip. You guys know this trip. You guys know that I take this trip. Sitting at the house right now, playing a game. Right now it's Roblox. I wonder what it is in your future, in your present. Ooh, that was firewood. And I am. I ain't gonna get it. Fuck it, I'll get it later. Tonight or something. But yeah, that is the nature of what God is. God is every living being that has ever existed. That's not the totality of what God is, but it is the creative, conscious force that animated and animates and created all things. And it's not a dude. It's not a guy. Very, very little of it is even masculine, aside from having created masculine. The feminine is largely the dominant force in the creation. Doesn't mean it's the dominant force in the creator. It means it's the dominant force in how it used, the dominant force it used in creation. And like the fact that, and then what's so wild about my work is from a government, gubernare, to control mentos the mind, gubernare, to control mentos the mind. I have spent my life telling people, you are free. No authority can exist in the universe because you are the highest authority over you as a peaceful person in the universe. The only way that you can revoke your rights is by violating someone else's rights. So you are the highest authority in the universe. No, that's what equal under the law means, is that no human being made rights, so no human being can dictate rights, can validly revoke your ability to consent. Doesn't exist. So you are the highest authority in the universe over yourself. And they're like, nuh-uh, that stranger and 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 that stranger have authority over me, and they have the legitimate right to revoke my consent and force me to do stuff at threat of physical violence. That is what y'all are saying. That is what government is. That's what authority is in a school. That's what authority is everywhere in the universe except inside of a prison where everybody deserves to be there. Every single person is absolutely guilty and deserves to be there. Outside of that, there is no such thing as authority. And there is. And then with from a religious context, my work has been, bro, we're all God, and that's why we don't have the right to just tell each other not to be gay and not to do certain substances and from religion. No, God said you got to do this and you got to be gays and you got to fucking be an evil bigot and you got to hate blacks. And in other religions that ain't, founded in white supremacy, they're like, no, it's not all about hating gays and stuff. You just got to hate the gays, right? And then you don't want to eat certain foods on certain days, and you don't eat it's bad, and it doesn't make you a bad person, but it's definitely a bad thing. Nothing can be bad that doesn't violate the rights and bodily autonomy and consent of beings. Doesn't exist. That's your opinion. And that's the sad thing about humankind, and especially Americans, is that y'all don't know the difference between a fucking opinion and a fucking fact. A fucking opinion and the fucking objective truth. You know why? Because you don't think there is a such thing as objective truth, despite knowing that facts are objective and that facts make up a fucking truth. That's what puzzles even fucking are. The pieces represent objective facts. And when you have all of the objective facts, the quantifiable metadata objective facts of a thing, you can put them together to form an objective truth. And now I'm on TikTok as opposed to articulating to my children my life. And this is part of my life. This is what I would be doing if I wasn't pushing record and doing this video. So I'm going to end it at 30 minutes just so it's clean and kind of well-rounded and rounded up. And I'm going to show you this. Look at that shit. Look at that shit. Just absolute. See, I'm an adult. I can hold the steering wheel with my knee or my hand. I have, and still. Now, am I recommending you do this? Only if you, as an adult, know that you have sufficient awareness capability to do so. So yeah, be an adult, learn, love, but love, give tough love. I've always been tough love. Even with your Uncle D, I spoiled the rotten hell out of that man, but I literally gave him tough love, and he gave me tough love. In fact, I probably learned my tough love from him. So stay safe, keep making good decisions. Don't be hard on yourself. You can't fail unless you violate somebody else's rights. So, love you. Kiss, kiss.